What's going on, everyone? This is Political Ideas and Thoughts. And I don't know if I'm going to release this video or not. But this has to be said eventually, and somebody's going to have to say it. Because it's getting... And this is by no means something that I'm completely innocent of, which is exactly why I'm making this video, actually, because it's not something that I'm blaming other people for. I'm just pointing out something that I've noticed, and something that has to be said, because if it's not said or it's not seen by others, it will keep going on being ignored for what it is. Now, it's a fair warning, this video might get very long because there's many nuances in what I'm talking about. I'm probably going to miss a few of them, but I'm going to try my best not to, because you could easily get trapped in this sort of understanding that I'm going to be talking about here. Hold up, let me try something. So basically the idea here is not to, because you see the problem that I have here is that with most of what politics is, most of what the news does is it tries to and I'm trying to avoid doing this, but it does this thing. A lot of politics does this thing where it doesn't really go after someone for the issues. I mean, there's some that do. I'm not saying that there aren't any, but most of the time they don't really go after somebody for their policy positions. They go after someone because of their beliefs, or their accuracy or inaccuracy or lack thereof, or whatever it is. And I'm not saying that that's wrong to go after their inaccuracy, but to only do that and not really go after their position. And the nuance about to go after their position is what I mean by go after their position, because this is a problem that I see, is that when they go after their position, the other side's position, whatever it is, and this isn't always true, but what they do is they do it in like a combative nature, like, oh, I'm wrong, or you're wrong and I'm right type of thing. Like, oh, this is ridiculous, you have to be wrong, this is wrong. They do this like ridiculous, like overblown type of way of doing things. And I'm not saying that I'm completely innocent of having this problem, but I try not to become too... We see, this is the problem with emotion in the first place, and why I try not to become emotional about things to some extent. I'm not saying that I like suppress emotions or anything, but what I do is I focus on the thing at hand instead of letting the emotions take control. You have to deal with the situation without getting into your emotions. You can't just because oftentimes the way people go about it, and I'm not saying that I'm innocent of doing this, but they go about disproving the other person's position, automatically thinking that their position is wrong, when it may not be wrong. And more often than not, there's something that's at least moderately correct in what their position is. See, this is the problem that's missing with politics, is you're not getting the full picture with any side. You have this stupid duopoly of two so-called opposing forces. Oh yeah, you better be Democrat. You're with us or against us mentality. You better be a Republican. If you're not, you're just a socialist. You're just a communist. You should just kill yourself. This type of ridiculous, and I'm overblowing things a little bit to some extent, but I'm pointing out a pattern. I'm pointing out a problem here. The problem is focusing on what I'm going to call politics, what most people call politics, rather than policy or solutions. And I'm a policy or solutions person for the most part. Now, I'm not saying that you can't say that somebody's wrong or you can't criticize the person. Of course you can. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm saying that the way most criticism is done doesn't work. It doesn't do what it sets out to do. It doesn't do what people think it does. It only makes the situation worse. And you can't talk to anybody about this, especially if they're already really set in the trenches when it comes to a political position, whatever it is, because they don't see properly. And this is not me trying to be insulting. This is just what is. They don't see what's happening properly. They don't understand the other side's point. Not only don't they understand the other side's point of view, but they don't understand that there are more than two sides to a situation here. There's this old cliched line that there are two sides to a story. There's more than two sides to a story, especially when it comes to a story like this. A story that doesn't really have the same type of I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but the same type of simplicity as other types of stories. And this is what most politics is missing. This is why politics is so damn just ridiculous. I mean, who in the world thought that two sides is a good idea? I mean, you can think of it this way. Would you want just two people running the entire country? Because that's basically what you have right now, for the most part. You have one person who advocates for one particular policy, and then you have the other person advocating for the other policy. I'm not saying that, and this is mostly for the United States. I mean, there are other parties in Europe and stuff like that, but for the most part, I think most of these countries follow the same sort of problem of left and right, conservative and liberal, but they do it in different ways, and I don't think they necessarily focus as much on the two and on the duopoly as much. But as I was saying, you can't have two sides. You can't have two people running a country like this, because you're going to create division. You're going to create a sort of stagnation where nothing gets done, and this is exactly what's happening. Why do you think Congress is known as Do Nothing Congress? Of course, now that has been taken over by Trump, and he calls the left the Do Nothing Left Congress. and all these things, but for the longest time, Congress has had the lowest approval rating of any. What is it like? The last time I checked it, was 2018 or 2019. It's what, 18%. 18%. And these are the people that you elect. These are the people you vote in. And they can't even do the jobs you want them to do. This duopoly system is not working. Yet for some reason you have these people, they don't think outside the box, so they don't see the problem. And the problem itself is this duopoly. The problem itself is that there is a duopoly. Because it leaves closed the possibility of new possibilities, new changes, new understandings. Now, I'm not saying that the parties don't change. The left has changed, but overall the same thing remains in the left, even though those changes are still there. There was I forget exactly if it was a book or what not, but there was I'm not sure what you'd call him, a sociologist, I think. His name was Jonathan Haidt, Hidt, I think it was, and he had this idea of the 5 different moral foundations. Was it care, fairness, harm, authority, loyalty, and something else. And then there was another one that was added, that was liberty or something. And the left embodies care and fairness, and the right embodies all 5 of them, apparently. But the point is that even though the left has changed over the last 50 or so years, it really changed within, the 60s or whatnot. It really changed, a couple years ago. But overall, the same principles remained from, the 60s on. Some of that changed because of the times people realized what bad ideas some of the other ideas were, and so they got rid of those. But the overall foundations stayed the same. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with these foundations. I'm saying that there's something that's missing. I think there's something missing from all of these foundations. And something that's missing is what is the problem here? And I'm not saying that nobody gets this, but nobody is willing to question, or seems to want to question, the current way of doing things. They just go with the same cliched and overly done policies that do nothing, do the same thing over and over and over again. Democrats point out how the Republicans are wrong, Republicans point out how the Democrats are wrong. You're both wrong. You're both inaccurate. You're both missing something important here. The importance of which could change everything. But I'm not saying that you're bad for being wrong. I'm saying that you're missing important information. And even if you do somehow encapsulate all of these moral foundations, there's still something missing. That I'm not even sure how to put it into words, but you can't have it. You can't really quantify this, and you can't really put it in a box and label it, because it doesn't really work that way. It's not something you can control. So this problem, we have this problem in the West of an overly pragmatic, overly controlling, overly individualistic society as the West, especially like the United States of America. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with these things, pragmatism or individualism, but it's gone to its extremes. It's still in its extremes in a lot of ways. You see that with the serious problems of capitalism. If you look at what capitalism is doing, you'll see that. But then, some people will think, well, socialism is the answer here. But that's the opposite problem. That has the exactly opposite problem. Although admittedly some of that is also due to corruption as well. Maybe even much of it, which is, why these 5 moral foundations are missing something. These 6 moral foundations. And I'll just call it essence or integrity or a sort of understanding. When there's a bunch of things that's missing, really, but it's missing this sort of really look attitude. I'm not talking about look and judge it based on your personal values. I'm saying look, see how it matches your personal values, and if it doesn't, why not? Maybe there's something there that you can add to what your personal values have, or maybe something there you've realized makes more sense based on your personal values or what you understand or whatever you want, whatever you usually use politics as. Although most people, for some reason, don't necessarily to explore their values and beliefs, which is exactly the problem right there. Because if you don't explore these problems, these beliefs and these understandings that you have, you're not going to see how they're flawed. You're not going to realize how detrimental they are, and you're not going to realize how triggering they are to you when they become devalued or defied, or judged wrongly or badly or whatever. And so you're going to ignore. Even worse, you're going to go into battle basically against these other ideas instead of actually exploring them and looking at them. Now, I'm not saying the process isn't necessarily easy, especially if you have an emotional reaction, but you gain more wisdom and insight and understanding from this process than if you were to just go into battle against other ideas. Now, I'm not saying that I'm completely innocent of doing this. I've done this in the past. There was a time in my past when I was really radical against certain elements of the left. Not necessarily the left itself, because I was pretty much left, but certain elements of it, which what most people would call like the social justice, like progressive, not necessarily progressive, like because there's some progressives that I actually do like, but I think most of it is the woke crowd type thing, and some of this stuff from the right was pretty problematic as well. But so there was this radicalization that kind of happened, and it wasn't until I started to explore these problems and I started to explore this thing, started to explore this problem. And that's how the radicalization ended. It didn't end by me just saying, oh, I'm going to escape politics and I'm not going to think about this. Or by saying, oh, I don't care about this. Without exploring that option, without actually looking at that personally. Because in saying something like, I don't care about this, it doesn't work. Or, oh, I'm going to exit politics. I'm just not going to do anything about it. I'm not going to think about it. It doesn't work because you're not disclosing or unlocking the flaws in your logic, the flaws in your understanding. Which, if you were to find this, you might find a new understanding, the understanding of which might change everything. So this sort of idea that I just talked about basically encapsulates what I just talked about. The other foundation, I don't know if I'd call it a moral foundation, but I'd call it the essence of true exploration, I guess. And when it comes to anything, this doesn't just apply to politics, it applies to, anything at all that you have an opinion about. Or even if you don't have an opinion about it, look at all the sides, look at things, and then you come up with your own ideas about this thing. You don't just... Because most people seem to go about things by saying, oh, these people must be experts. They say it's this way or that way. So they must know. The truth is they don't know. Not really. Most of them they're either guessing, or they're biased, or they're ignoring facts, which is the same thing as bias, I guess. Or they're deliberately ignoring facts because they're not willing to look honestly at what they see. And I'm not saying that this process is easy, because it can be pretty difficult, especially if you have a reaction towards something. But just because you have a reaction against something doesn't mean you shouldn't explore it. Actually, that means the opposite. It means you should, or doesn't mean you shouldn't explore it. It means the opposite. It means you should explore it because there's something there that you're not willing to look at. Either because you're afraid of what, it might be because of the way it's phrased as well. But it might also be because you're afraid that you might find out something totally different. Maybe it's, who knows? There could be a bunch of reasons, but this is what is missing from politics. This seventh moral foundation. I don't even know if I'd call it a moral foundation as much as I would call it a sort of prerequisite to true understanding, I suppose, would be a better way of explaining it. And even if you come to the conclusions that you come to after doing all this exploration and finding all that you find, and finding the ideas that you find, and then creating your own ideas or whatever, even then you must be willing to admit that this could be wrong. This could be completely inaccurate or partly inaccurate. And one really good way of doing this is by looking at things in percentages. This doesn't have to be exact or definite. but general, given what you may think or understand about something. So, what I mean by percentages is you say, well, this is about 90% accurate. This is about 85% accurate. This is about 75% accurate. And the reason why this is more helpful is because the problem with things like this is right, this is wrong, without the percentages, like this is 80% wrong, this is 90% wrong, this is 40% wrong, whatever it is. Without that, you're just going to extremes. Oh, this is wrong. Well, if it's wrong, then you don't have to explore it. As a matter of fact, because you know it's wrong, you know everything. You don't need to look at it. You don't need to question it. And someone tells you that it's not wrong. You know, some of it's right, or maybe you need to look at this a little more. You're going to get angry. You're going to say, no, this is right. My idea is right. Your idea is wrong. That right there is the problem. This sort of all or nothing understanding. Oh, this is bad. This is good. No, I'm not saying that bad or good. You shouldn't have labels like bad or good. But I'm saying you have percentages. 80% bad, 40% bad, 90% good, 55% good, whatever it is. Where you could say it's mostly good, or it can be good or it can be bad or whatever. Because otherwise you're going to be deluding yourself, for one, because most things aren't as black and white as, oh, it's good, it's bad, it's right, it's wrong, it's correct, it's incorrect, especially when it comes to politics, because most politics is engaged in this sort of process of all or nothing thinking. This itself is the problem or the trap. It's probably the biggest trap of all people throughout all time. Right there, that's the biggest trap. Well, one of the biggest traps. It's right up there with believing that security is something that exists, which I might go into in another episode or another video, but this leads to delusion, leads to hubris, leads to this idea that you know everything, that you're right. I mean, of course, if you think about it, you're going to go, no, I don't know everything. Well, if you don't know everything, then why are you thinking this is right, this is wrong, this is accurate, this is inaccurate? You don't know everything. You could be wrong about that. But because you don't explore that, because you don't realize that you don't know everything, because you don't look at that and say, wait a second, I don't know everything. Now, this doesn't mean that you then go into a pit of despair and say, oh man, there's no way I can know everything. There's no way I can get everything here. Which is true, but the way to fix that isn't to go from one extreme to another of saying, nothing's right, nothing's wrong, nothing's bad, nothing's good, nothing's accurate or inaccurate. It's just, or, this nihilism, or this sort of, nothing can be proven or disproven type thing, because that's the same problem, all or nothing thinking. That's the part of the problem right there, is that most people don't want to think. They don't want to explore their understandings because their understandings are not necessarily firmly established. And the reason why they're not firmly established is because they don't explore them, they don't look at them, they don't change them based on new understandings. And they don't, have this idea that, it's possible that I could be wrong. This is only 80% right. Or this is only 90% right, or whatever it is. Based on what I know so far. This type of thing. And because they don't do that, the foundation from which their beliefs and their values and their understandings spring is shaky and liable to collapse. But because I don't do this for the most part, I don't really have this problem. I'm not saying that I don't necessarily get triggered or have an emotional reaction, but my response is usually a bit different from most people's. I go with my opinion at first, and then I look at what this thing is. And then, later, I go, wow, maybe this is a little bit right. Not completely right, or maybe it is right, and my ideas were a little wrong. This type of thing, because at the time of your reaction, it can be hard to see where you are wrong, because you're firmly established within this idea that you have. Especially if it's like an extreme idea. When I mean extreme idea, I don't mean like extreme, like violent idea. What I mean by extreme is this all or nothing thinking of right, wrong, bad, good. Only one thing, but not that. The other thing, whatever it is. Accurate, inaccurate. This type of thinking creates divisions. It creates a sort of, creates divisions. It creates, it dehumanizes the other party, dehumanizes yourself. And that's what's also missing from politics as well, is the human aspect. If you're in politics, you're not human. It's not me being I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just saying that if you're engaged in this sort of behavior of right or wrong, you're not seeing the other party as human. Now, I'm not saying that if you think about it, you're going to say, oh, no, these people aren't human. But that's the problem, that you're not thinking about it. That's exactly the problem right there. You're not thinking about it, you're not seeing that, you're not understanding this. And so you fall into the trap of, oh, this person's just wrong. This person's just an asshole. This type of thing. And so when you see that, you basically don't see them as humans learning, or humans just trying to understand the world or themselves or whatever it is. And this not seeing the other party, the other person, especially not necessarily the other party, but the other person, and ask the other person's aspect. By not seeing that, you then remove the one thing that would make you wake up, would make you realize what you're doing. So, I know this is a very deep episode, but it is something that I've noticed. And just because I'm making this episode, I've said this already before, but just because I'm making this episode doesn't mean that I haven't been guilty of making these mistakes. But this is exactly why I'm making this episode, because I've made these mistakes. I understand these mistakes. I know where they're coming from. I know how they happen. I know why they happen. Because I've seen this happen, and then I've explored it. You know, it takes work. It took me to get out of the radicalization that I was in. It took me a month or two, 3 months, 4 months, to get out of it at the level that I was in. To completely get out of it, I haven't, really didn't happen until 2019 or so. It started about 2017, 2018. And there's still parts that are in this level of all or nothing thinking. But I'm dealing with this problem myself as well, which is, why I'm making this episode, because this isn't just something I'm telling you like I'm some person on the higher, like on a perch, on a pedestal, looking down at you, all of you, going, "Wow, look at all you! You're all ignorant. You're all doing this problem that I am never guilty of doing." No, I'm not going to say that. I'm never going to say that, because it would not be true. Probably, it may never be true, but it is, in some ways, more true than it would have been 2 years ago. Not saying that you're ignorant, but I'm saying that because of my explorations, I understand where people are coming from more than 1 or even 6 months ago, even a month ago, even. There's many people talk about the IQ and this intelligence quotient thing, as if they're just one type of intelligence. But there's not just one type of intelligence. There's like nine known types of intelligence. Emotional intelligence, intrapersonal intelligence, kinetic intelligence, musical intelligence. I think there's a few others as well. Verbal intelligence, or whatever it is. I believe there's like 8 or 9 different types of intelligence besides the usual types of intelligence. So, anyways, it's a bit of a long video, but I thought I'd just make this video for all of you to kind of ponder yourself. Maybe you see this problem, maybe you don't. Maybe if you don't, that's fine. I'm not saying that you're bad for not seeing this. If you don't, explore this within yourself and see if you can see this happening. The first step to dealing with or solving, emotions, the first step to dealing with them is seeing them. The first step to solving a problem, or dealing with inaccuracies or missing information, is to see them. Because, like I said, most of what is known as politics is missing these 2 different elements. So, anyways, if you have any questions, comments, leave them below. This is Political Ideas and Thoughts, and I'll talk to you on the next episode.